Approval or any amendments to the agenda? So moved? Second?
Our screen's not working.
Oh, there it is. Counselor Rhino.
Well, the motion is made, but this 9:30 adjournment, I was going to move a motion that we adjourn at 9 o'clock instead of 9:30. There's a lot of people who have to have their vocation and they get up early in the morning, and I don't imagine staff would probably appreciate that extra half an hour. Whether we want to in the future start getting going at 6:30 or 6:45, that would be much better than trying to stay late till 9:30 with what's going on. So there's a motion on the floor, it's been moved and seconded. I'd like to move an amendment to that motion that would, it to be a 9 o'clock adjournment.
Moved and seconded to the amendment. On to speak, Warden Rolston.
Thank you. Well, I'm not speaking in favor of the amendment because we used to start our budget meetings at 6:30, and then it was requested that we not start until 7 because it was difficult for folks who were working to get here for 6:30. So that effectively cut a half an hour off of our meetings, and in order to try and keep the same timeline, the CAO suggested what I thought about doing 9:30 instead of 9, and because it's, even if we say 9, it's usually 9:30 when we're out of here anyway. I felt that that was a reasonable thing to do to keep the same time frame of time spent on each meeting at the budget, rather than cutting it back. And that's the reason it's 9:30, is because it changed from 6:30 to 7 o'clock for a start time.
Thank you, Warden. Counselor Green.
I believe the last 2 years, we've adjourned at 9 and started at 7. No, we haven't, because I was the one that kicked on the 6:30 start 2 years ago, because I couldn't get here for 6:30. Oh, and I seen in the calendar online, it was set for 7 to 9. Still is listed in the calendar. I am very much in favor of the motion. It's great if you got a 5-minute drive home. I got a half an hour. It is, so just my thoughts.
Thank you, Counselor Green. Director of Finance, are you speaking on this topic?
I would mind. Yeah.
Go ahead.
Thanks, Mr. Chair. Actually, I'm thinking that depending upon how long the CAO plans to take on the business plan presentation that she has, that a 7 to 9, at least for this evening, might work out. There's 2 subjects on the docket or the agenda for tonight. One is the remainder of the business plan presentation the CAO has, and then there's we have a report on the coming back on the transfer tax issue.
Thank you. Warden Rolston.
I would just simply caution folks that if we go back from 7 to 9, we better be prepared to come for extra meetings. Thank you.
Thank you, Warden. And I don't think the deed transfer tax report is going to be something that is probably going to be quick tonight either, judging from previous conversations we had on deed transfer tax. All right, so there's an amendment to the motion on the floor. It's been first and seconded. Is there any further discussion?
Question?
Question's been called to the amendment. And the motion has passed. Oops. Eight to 3 with myself, Councillor Mitchell, and Warden Rolston voting nay. All right, I'll be looking for the approval. Yeah, of the amended now amended agenda for an adjournment at 9 o'clock. We've amended.
Passed the amendment.
You passed the amendment, now we have to pass the motion of approval of the minutes and.
It's already voted.
One second. Yeah, question has called. Question been called. All those in favor? Aye. Motion's carried. All right. Now we're going to continue on with the business plan review. And, oh, sorry. My mistake. Thank you, Councilor Mitchell. First, I would begin by acknowledging that we're Mi'kma'ki in the district of Spaganagity, the ancestral and unceded territory of the Mi'kmaq peoples. East Hants further acknowledges the 50 African Nova Scotian communities whose 400-year history have contributed to the province's culture, history, and legacies. We are all treaty people. Now I will continuation of the review of the 2024-2025 business plan, CAO.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So councillors, if you want to situate yourselves in your budget document, in the business planning section, on page 25-26 is where you'll see the first cost center that we're going to start with once we get through 3 slides on sort of some significant initiatives we want to point out. So the 3 slides, and you do have the deck of slides printed for you this evening as well. I had emailed them to you last budget meeting, and the slides haven't changed. I think I made 1 or 2 edits, but just minor ones for notes. So starting through, we did last week, we talked about your council cost center. What I'd like to talk about now is sort of the business plans overall, and I think it's important to note that I'm not going to go through every piece of our operations and talk about what we do as a municipality. That's quite well documented in the physical document in your business plans, what each department does, sort of that annual repeatable cycle of things. What I am going to focus on tonight are some of the significant initiatives that are proposed in your budget that tie back to your strategic plan. And most everything you've either heard about, approved, or expect. So I don't think there'll be a whole lot of surprises in here, but I think it's important that we go through and give council an opportunity to ask questions. We do have the directors in the room. Our Director of Parks, Rec and Culture sends regrets. She's ill this evening and can't be in the room tonight, but I think we can probably answer any questions that might come up from that perspective. And I think Adam probably has a link to Alana electronically at this point, so she's here with us in spirit if she's not in the room. So as far as significant initiatives go, a lot of these initiatives that you're going to see on your screen for the next 3 slides are either new services that are being provided by the municipality or funded through reserves, and they're things that council has had in their work plan for some time. Some of them are multi-year projects, and some of them have been in the budget for a couple of years, and we've been carrying them forward because of resource issues or whatnot. So the first one is the website development and accessibility. We do have, that project is actually winding down. We plan to carry it forward into next year if we have to, but I'm hoping that you'll see a new website by the end of this fiscal year. And that website comes with a lot of accessible features, and I think you're really going to notice the improvement to just the overall accessibility of our information, the quality of the information on the website. Of course, we have a municipal election this year, and I can't underscore the amount of energy and effort a municipal election takes to run, to put off, regardless of how many people, how many districts have elections running in them. The work is the same. The core work is the same. And I should mention too, some of these initiatives are in here and they don't actually cost you any money, but they cost time and resources, and they're important to your long-term goals. So you're not always going to see a dollar value associated with some of these items. The election does have a dollar value associated with it, and we have a budget of about $143,000 to run that election. I don't think you're going to spend that much money because you are going 100% electronic and telephone, so that will reduce your cost quite significantly, I hope. The province has put some pretty high standards on diversity, equity, and inclusion, and anti-racism and anti-hate that we are going to have to be in compliance with by the end of 2025, I believe it is. So Department of Justice is supporting municipalities through AMANS. AMANS will be hiring We already have accessibility coordinators to help municipalities, but we'll be hiring for the anti-racism and anti-hate part as well. So again, it's probably not going to cost you a lot of money because you'll get that support from the Association of Municipal Administrators, but it will take a significant amount of time. And of course, it's good work and it's the right work to do, and it ties directly back to your strategic plan for your stronger community component. We have quite a few mobile device management system for IT, and I'm going to get into a lot of these when we go through, so I'm not going to touch on all of them. We have removed the Nova Scotia Quality of Life Survey. You'll see that on your adjustments from last budget meeting. Big thing for this year, we have a water rate review to start. That will significantly impact time and energy in both operations, I&O, and in finance. And that process is quite a process, so council is involved at many of the steps along the way. We do have our RCMP policing model. You've seen the impact of the cost of that the final year coming into play. We have a slide, I will talk about that when we get into my particular cost centers. Lots of tourism work, lots of park work that we're going to be doing. And then you'll see throughout this, this list as well, there's lots of work in the wastewater system related to follow-on information that we're gathering after our capacity study was done and after our plant optimization study has been done. There's more information that we now know that we need, and you'll see some different projects for that as well.
Okay, CAO, I'm going to let you answer questions as by slide, so now you
Sure.
can do that. So first up, Councilor Rhino, are you still on to speak?
Yeah. You talk about the election, what what was budgeted in the 2024? What was budgeted 4 years ago? Can you give me a ballpark?
I can't, not off the top of my head. Normally I can pull numbers right from anywhere, but that one I can't. I do know it was 100 and something thousand,
So what did we want to go with this one, 140?
140
So
is what's
if
in
it was-
reserves.
If it was less last time, when we
It was,
had
it
a
was
little
more
bit of
last.
both, why are we bidding so much if it's going all electronic this time, I guess is my question.
It was more than the 140 last time. I just don't know
So
the
you do
exact
remember.
number. I don't know the exact number. Council had a full report on this in November, so
Mm-hmm.
we can pull that back up and refresh council.
All right, thank
Or
you.
not even November, I think it was December or January.
Okay, Councilor McPhee.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I was just wondering about I'm very much glad to see that you're moving ahead with the diversity equity program. So does that include all staff, every employee of the municipality? And will it also include the council?
Yeah, so there's a couple of different elements of that. There is training in the budget for counselors and staff around diversity, equity, and inclusion, specifically as well around the work that we want to do around Indigenous awareness and helping the community and council and staff be more aware of our Indigenous neighbors and reconciliation and the work that's being done there. But we also have to have a plan, an official plan, like we did with the accessibility plan. We're going to have a plan for anti-hate and racism, anti-racism developed. So that is part of the work that needs to be done over the next 2 years, I believe, like we did with accessibility. We did our accessibility plan about 3 years ago, and now we need to update that. So updates are being requested by the province for that within the next year or two. And the Anti-Racism and Hate Act has been passed in 2022. So we have to do our work associated with that as well.
And of course, accessibility basically fits in with this whole idea anyway.
Yeah, so you'll see through our accessibility work is really, we've identified different areas of our municipal operations that we need to make sure are accessible. And we've identified initiatives that work towards that. So we have everything from human resources to the built environment. We have different sections in our accessibility plan. And you'll see some initiatives in the budget that are associated with that. And really our communication through our website is our primary communication tool. So That's what we've been working on over the last year and a half, sort of making sure that we meet the WAG 2.0 accessibility standards and on that website. And we're now building it. We're building it in-house. We had it designed externally, and the in-house build is happening now.
It's a big initiative,
Yeah,
having seen it in the provincial part of it.
yeah.
It's a multi-year thing to get everybody trained and on board, and it takes a lot of
And,
work.
and really, it's a never-ending
Yes.
initiative. Like, you're always going to be working towards
Yeah, it's not
making
a
sure your
one-
services are accessible, making sure that you have communities that are welcoming and diverse, and that's an ongoing initiative
Yes.
for sure for the next.
And I was just wondering, the well and septic program, so you say the kickoff, so,
Yeah,
you
so
flesh this-
council approved a well and septic loan program for folks who are in well and septic. And we have one currently for the solar program, so it's going to be similar to that. There's $200,000 that has been set aside for that program. And we have our coordinator hired, and they are starting on the 2nd of April. So that'll be one of the first things that we get our sustainability coordinator working on, is rolling out that developing the program and then rolling it out.
they will be providing loans for,
We'll provide loans for folks who need financial assistance to renew their well and septic.
right. Okay, thank you very much.
Okay.
Thank you, Counselor. Next up, Counselor Mitchell.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Just two questions. Following up on the diversity, equity, and inclusion training, will you be utilizing the NSFM's Committee of Equity and Community Wellness? Will you be sending suggestions to them or working with them in a partnership?
I'm not aware of that committee reaching out to municipalities as of yet, but I assume that they will be engaged in the conversation when the municipal work begins through AMANS, and we're partners with NSFM, so they would be engaged with that work.
And the second one, the Nova Scotia Quality of Life Survey, is that something the province is looking at too, or?
That's the one that we spoke about last week, Mr. Chairman, through you. We spoke about that last week in the council cost center, and council asked for it to be removed from the list, from the budget, so that'll be coming out. It's the one that Engage Nova Scotia does. It's the second time they've done it. And the issue with East Hants is they can't guarantee that they can get just East Hants information because our postal codes cross over into HRM and Colchester County, so but I think you will still get good information. The survey will still happen, and you'll still get the information from that survey. It just won't be East Hants
Is
specific.
it reported to the province?
Yes, it's public. Yeah.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. That's all. Thank you again.
Thank you, Counselor Mitchell. See no further questions?
Okay. The next group of projects, or the next page, really is a lot of planning. We have the Mount Uniacke Secondary Planning Strategy. Council has started recruiting for their housing strategy committee. Lots of upgrades for our tourism sites. We'll be talking about these in the individual cost centers. The Mount Uniacke groundwater study is going to be conducted this year. The accessibility plan updates, like I just mentioned. So all of this work will, not all of it has a cost. Some of it is internal, but it has a cost as far as staff resources. I wanted to mention we've been working this year with the fire services on some marketing material for volunteer recruitment, and we have the first draft of a video that the fire departments have been party to creating. So we're going to finish that work up this year with a 90-second video and two 30-second videos. For next year, what you'll see in the budget is $4,500 to do some follow-up work with that copy that we get, because we own all the copy that the video, I think we have like 9 hours of video that we can work with. So we're going to use some more money to further those marketing materials for the fire departments for volunteer recruitment. The engineered spring outfall hydrogeological study is a requirement of environment, so we'll be doing that this year. And then we'll continue with our sludge management plan with the waste management center, or the waste water plant. Always exciting when you get to study the sludge in your sewer lagoon. And then, of course, we've still, our ongoing asset management work. A lot of the projects in this budget relate back to that ongoing asset management work. But the work that our staff are doing on asset management with respect to roads and other infrastructure is quite phenomenal. And I think council's going to quite enjoy getting some updates on some of the mapping. And just the other day, we had an update on the municipal surplus properties map that's been created. We were working on the Mount Uniacke, the motion of Mount Uniacke to look for surplus property. And the mapping that has come out of the asset management project is quite unbelievable, what they can do now. So lots of great work being done there, which is making, our work much more efficient. And we're able to give council information that we weren't able to give you before, as far as our assets and whatnot, pulling that information together. And also, in tourism, we need to be prepared at some point to do the Walton Lighthouse relocation and studying the Burnt Coat Lighthouse, making sure that those coastal erosion aren't issues for those lighthouses. This one is mostly capital projects that you'll see, some initiatives that are currently underway. So, for example, the traffic calming, we're in year 2 of that 3-year pilot for traffic calming. There's playgrounds in here. There's also a large project in the council cost center for the replacement of your microphone system and conferencing system. The cost of that project is over $100,000 to get this whole system replaced, and it is at its end of life, and it's no longer supported. So it's one of those things that you plan for, you do have money set aside in reserve for, and will have to be done this year at some point. So the other ones are, a lot of them related to water, wastewater, playgrounds. The work in your business parks continues. And a lot of work around property in this year's budget. So there's work around your lift stations, trying to figure out how we take each one of those lift stations and look for emergency power, how we can do backup power at those, given that we don't own a lot of the land around our lift stations, and a lot of the parcels that we own for lift stations are fairly tiny. Looking at that, doing some surveying. There's lots of surveying in this budget. Getting started on the DAR line with a partner to develop that line. We also have some extra hours in here for the DAR line for our own staff to do some summer work around that. And lots of other, drainage projects, lift station projects, that type of thing. So you will see when we get to the I&O budget, there is a proposed position in here for another project engineer. And when you look at all of the projects on this list, you can see why. There's a lot of projects at play and a lot of work being done to understand the systems and understand what we need to do next. So those are the 3 slides that you can kind of go back to at any point and say, okay, what are we doing this year? What are the biggest initiatives? What you'll see in each one of these business plans is for each one of these initiatives, you'll see a square, like a project square that has the project, an overview, the strategic alignment, estimated resources, and the critical success factors to the project. So if you want to know about any of these projects that are on one of these 3 slides, you can go back to the document itself. There is a project description with all the information you need to know on it. And this business plan will be posted on the public website once it's complete.
Okay, CAO, we have some questions. First up, Councillor Mitchell.
Just a quick question on transit, what's the plan going forward for?
So the transit, there's $75,000 in this budget for transit, and that's to update the most current plan that council has, and we are seeking funding for that. And I'll get into that when I get into the corporate services business plan. All these will be discussed again in more detail.
Okay, thanks.
Thank you, Counselor. Counselor Musa.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So when, I don't know if we have any this year, but just a general question. When you do like, when you add capacity to your water or wastewater, who pays for that?
There's no magical answer to that. So if we add capacity, we do have the ability to take a certain amount of capacity projects from the obligatory reserves that we collect through sewer and wastewater infrastructure charges. Quite often there's not enough funding in there to do that, so we'll look for external funding. And if there's not enough external funding, then the urban service rate taxpayers would have to pay for that. So, for example, the Shubenacadie wastewater treatment plant, we had capacity money, then it went over budget. We got funding for it, it went over budget. So the urban service rate payers will have to pay for the difference in that.
So that's my point. Like, so if you're adding, those people already paid for their structure they have.
Right.
And I don't think it's fair to pay for adding structure for other developer to come in and benefit from that. Because I think my point is that the infrastructure charges that, like when you hook up, should be all paying for that. And if not, it's not fair for the existing resident to pay and I think that's why we always bail them out with the $400,000. And I don't think the general tax rate should pay that either. So any way we can raise our like infrastructure charges, like to hook up, to be able to accommodate whatever coming our way. I think it's fair, because I don't think it's fair for the resident who's living here for 30 years and pay for that infrastructure for 30 years and keep paying for that infrastructure that somebody else is gonna take advantage of. So I think the hookup should be at least paying off for that, or the debt charges on.
Through you, Mr. Chairman. So that's exactly right. And that is what the $400,000 recognition was for over the years, because there's not always enough money in that infrastructure reserve to pay for the capacity upgrades that we need. The capacity study has just been done, so that sort of 20-year look to where we need to go for our sewer and water systems. That was the study that was done last year. I believe we're still wrapping it up and looking for some more information from that study. But once that's done, what we need to do is look at the results of the study, the 20-year requirements for capacity and financing, and figure out what those new infrastructure charges need to be. They haven't changed in a long time. That infrastructure bylaw has been the same for as many years as I've been here, probably 20 years. So that is the work that's ongoing now, to figure out what those infrastructure charges need to look like. You're probably not going to catch up to the point where the urban service rate taxpayers aren't contributing towards those projects for, depending on what you do with the fees, for a number of years. Just because the order of magnitude of the system work that needs to be done is so great that the reserves we have can't do it. And the external funding that we have doesn't, I think the most we could get is 73% if we got the best funding program out there, which the money doesn't always exist. So there are opportunities that we take for funding, and the warden has made the point several times, like a lot of those funding programs are related to water and sewer, and we take advantage of them as much as we can. But inevitably, those ratepayers who are here now will end up paying for some of that infrastructure that doesn't necessarily relate back to the developer put in the pipes to go to their house. They paid for that through their land sale. They paid the infrastructure charges. They pay for that when they build their house. They have to put the pipes from the road into their house, and if they break, they have to fix those too. So you could have a lateral that breaks, and it could be, a $15,000 repair, depending on where you have to go and what you have to do. So all of that they pay for, but they also pay for the debt charges associated with infrastructure that goes back to capacity. So I agree, that's not really right, but that is the way that you operate a system. And right now, we have an area of dense development that relies on that system to exist.
Yeah, I can see an easy fix for it, but I think we should start raising our charges
That is in the,
and make sure it's gonna pay for the upgrade, or the people are not gonna be able to afford their taxes.
yeah.
With the assessment going up and put more rates on them, and I don't think it's fair. Thank you.
Thank you, Counselor. Next up, Counselor Garden Cole.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, through you. So just continuing on with what Councillor Musa was talking about, is that planned, that rates would go up for developers for infrastructure costs?
I will say that the rates need to be looked at. It's up to council whether they go up or not. But we
Okay.
will be bringing, part of the work of follow-on work from the capacity study is figuring out how much you need to spend in the next 20 years to meet your capacity needs. And then you've got to figure out how much of that's going to come from the developers.
Okay, and that is something that is in the works?
Right, and the last time we did that was 1998.
Okay.
So we're
and
working-
what's the
and that was a
ETA on that?
25-year
Just
study.
like ballpark?
We should be, by the end of this coming fiscal year, we should be, it's a long process. There's a lot
Okay.
of information involved.
Okay, thank you. And also, I'm just looking at points here under the infrastructure and operations INO capital projects. Did you say these will be discussed in detail further on?
Most of them, yes. There's a slide with, yeah.
Okay, I'll wait till then, thanks.
If we don't hit what you need to know, let us know.
Okay.
Thank you, Counselor. Okay, continue on, CAO.
So counselors, we're going to get into each cost center and each director, and mine is first. So if you look at your business plans on page, my office starts on page 18. And you'll see all of these projects listed with their project boxes. And you'll see sort of the financial highlights towards the end. The overall budget is on page 25. Sorry, there's a staffing complement on page 24. The overall budget for each cost center follows that. And then you have sort of the budget highlights for where the money's coming from and the reconciliation from last budget to this budget. So if you want to follow on with each department, these go in that order that your binder goes in. So if you're looking for variances, they're on page 26 of the budget document. And essentially, this table will take you through how the CAO's office impacts the general tax rate. And each department has one of these sections and slides, so I'll take you through those. So in the CAO's office, we have 6 full-time employees and one not part-time employee, but we share a position with corporate services. We also manage the government grants through this cost center, although our Parks and Recreation folks do the legwork behind the grants. It gets funded through the CAO's cost center. So you'll see in here, there is a decrease for the senior safety grant. And next, on February 20th, budget meeting during corporate residential services, you'll have reports on your general government grants and your community partnership grants. Joe will do a full presentation for you on those. But for the variances, senior safety is going down by 15,000 because that group no longer exists, and the insurance grant is increasing by 10,000 per that motion of council that was made before Christmas when that was brought to council. From a communications point of view, we do all of the communication work in our cost center. So we do have the website redesign that I mentioned. We also have some money in there for marketing, photos, and videos. Typically, we've had pots of money in different departments for these types of things, but we've centralized them all into one. And my staff will be managing all of those going forward. Our family of signs design has been in the budget for a number of years. as we've gone, you know, through different iterations of communications folks in my department, we are now working on that mostly in-house and getting that done in-house with our own staff. There is some money in there for professional services to help with the technical components of sign design. But for the most part, the design is now being done in-house. So I don't think we'll spend all of that 15,000, but whatever we don't spend just won't come in from reserves for it. And we also have, following the design of the family of signs manual, we'll also be doing our wayfinding signage from the highway to this campus and to the East Hand Sportsplex off our exits. We have, this year is the final year of our RCMP model. So come April 1, the RCMP will be fully staffed with 28 officers, and we don't have our departmental assistance pilot program started yet. Department of Justice has, we've re-signed a contract to start that April 1, 2024, and they are hiring for those 2 positions to have them in place by April 1st, 2024. So, and that's no fault of anyone, I don't think. It's just the staff sergeants turning over in Enfield and that work not getting done. And then, of course, we have the municipal election in 2024. Any questions? Okay. So moving on to corporate services, their business plan is from page 27 to 42 in your document. So you'll see all of the same discussions there. I have a couple of slides for their department. So the insurance portfolio, in this particular cost center, the insurance portfolio includes your commercial general liability, your pollution, and your cyber insurance. So there is a $14,000 increase in what we call the general insurance components of this budget. The budget itself is about $140,000, so it's representing about a 10% increase in this. This is where you'll see the well and septic program being done. There is not actually a $2,000 expenditure or $200,000 expenditure in the budget. Council has just set aside cash from their reserves to be able to loan that money out and bring it back in through people's taxes over a certain number of years. There is a position in this budget that I'm referring to as the manager of public safety. This would be a new position in the organization and one that I think is very much needed. Initially, we would be looking to this position to do our fire department liaison, animal control, senior safety, which, as I mentioned earlier, the Senior Safety Association is no longer in existence, but that is a really important service that was being provided by council. A lot of RCMP and policing work happening right now in the province, just sort of the policing models that I'm struggling to keep up with. And the SHREW and the East Hants Ground Search and Rescue Liaison, which isn't a huge job if there's nothing going on. But as soon as something starts happening, you need sort of that dedicated resource to do that. The biggest one is definitely the EMO work that needs to be done. So we've been working with, our development officer has been our lead EMO person for a number of years, and she's done a fabulous job of keeping us up to date, keeping our plan up to date. But we really need to have more focus on EMO, on preparedness, on contingency planning, and a lot of those things that no one on staff currently has time in their day to do. So EMO will become something much bigger than it has been, as we've seen in the past 2 years with the disasters that are happening. And I think you really need a dedicated person who is focusing on emergency preparedness, helping your communities, making sure that your community members have the resources they need. And I don't want to say we're not doing that now, but I think we could do it much better and be more prepared in general. As I mentioned, the volunteer recruitment for fire departments, will continue working on the materials for those. I think the fire departments are going to be extremely happy with the results of what's going on there. And then when we look at real estate, so a couple of things that I'm recommending this year. Currently we have a vacant policy analyst position. What I'm recommending is we take that position and turn it into a corporate project manager to manage some of your bigger projects that you have that aren't necessarily engineering related, things like land redevelopment, property management, those types of things, and still achieve your policy work through either summer student management of that or the work that's ongoing now with your managers throughout the organization. So we've done a lot of really great work on our policies over the last 4 years with that position in place. We don't want to lose that momentum, but I think right now council's priorities are more on getting some of those community projects done than policy work. We'll continue to do the policy work.
Okay, we have some questions here, CAO.
Sure.
First up, Councilor Rhino.
Yes, Mr. Chair, what would be the cost for that additional FTE there, that manager of public safety?
I don't have the exact cost. I think it's probably around $80,000 all in.
So we'd be paying this person $80,000?
Well, no, they're all in costs, so there's more than just salary, and there's benefits and workspace and,
But still, that would be coming out of the general tax rate
that's the recommendation.
at $80,000, which we are getting done now. You know, to me, that's a savings right there. That we could cut back the tax rate for the people who are struggling out there. And I'd be wondering, you know, do many other municipalities of our size have strictly a manager of public safety, or is that, or if they do have that position, is it lumped in with something else that they do more than just that? So, you know, if that would be my question is, let's do a comparison and see. But $80,000 is quite a chunk of change, and we'd be well on the way to dropping halfway to, or close to halfway, or a third anyway, of dropping that another cent off that rate.
Thank you, Councilor. Is there a response to the question about do other municipalities have similar?
Through you, Mr. Chairman, I know other municipalities have what most of them call them a fire department coordinator, and they do all the work. We're just calling it a manager of public safety because I don't want it to be focused on just coordinating the fire departments, because our council has a relationship with fire departments that is sort of hands off, or arm's length, probably a better word for it. But really, the focus here is going to be on, for me, the first year focus on this, and probably second as well, would be on your EMO planning, response, and your senior safety work that needs to be done.
Being done currently, right? And like I'm
Through you,
saying,
Mr. Chairman, no, it's not. The senior safety work is not being done because the Senior Safety Association ceased to exist last year. So you have some money that you're saving on that. We also have some money in reserve that was given back to us for that position. And I believe that was brought in this year, finance? Yes. So part of that's being funded from the money that came back in from senior safety. I think that's about $40,000. The EMO stuff, you are responding to EMO events right now. I would not say that there's so much more that we could do to be ready for events, and they're happening so much more often that we really do need to have a dedicated resource to that. I guess that's all. I mean, you've all seen it when you have emergencies happen in your communities. There's a lot, and it's a lot. And to have good, well-laid plans before those emergency hits is so critical to how your community comes out on the other end of those. Again, you know, the new positions in the budget, and every penny in this budget is council's choice. This is my recommendation as your CAO, and I guess we'll see where we go.
well, you know, truth being told, we could put 12 people can probably keep them to work. right? I'm looking at it through the lens of trying to help the small person out there who's struggling from day to day. When I see an $80,000 cost and I look at, you know, what are we getting now? Is it worth it going there? And I'm not convinced it is at this point. And I'll be looking for, you know, for other positions to see if they measure up to that, because I think there's an opportunity that we could help the tax rate out. Thank you.
Thank you, Counselor. Next up, Counselor Musa. Hold on, I'm just turning people off to turn people on here. Here we go.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. A question about the insurance on, I know before we bought the Sportsplex, the insurance was paid by the area rate. So now that's become municipal property. What happened with the insurance?
Through you, Mr. Chairman, the insurance is still being paid by the facility,
Okay, so,
and through the area rate, if there's a deficit, it would have to be paid through the area rate.
okay, thank you.
Warden Rolston.
Thank you. Speaking to the new full-time position, I think the issue is that our current development officer is trying to cover this, and she's doing a great job, but folks, look at the development in East Hants. And one person can only be stretched so far, and that position is stretched very, very far at this point in time. And, you know, I have no doubt that this is needed. It would allow the development officer to concentrate on the development, on the job she was hired to do. At one point in time, within my memory, when we had our own dog catcher and everything, and he was also a bylaw officer, and he was also the EMO person. He looked after EMO. But when that position was eliminated, then the development officer inherited the EMO work. And I think at the rate that we're growing, and with the things that we have seen happen, even just over the last year, I think to have EMO and these things all centralized with one person would be a good thing, and not that our development officer isn't doing, you know, the best job that she can do with the hours that she has to allocate to us. The bottom line is they're not making any more hours in the day and any more days in the week that I'm aware of. And as a growing municipality, part of providing the services that the public expect us to have and to be ready for the things the public expect us to be ready for, as we grow, it takes more to do that. And we'd like to go back to the days when we could operate with half the number of employees that we do, but it's not realistic. And I would go so far as to say the number of employees that we have to do the amount of work that we have, you know, we're very, very fortunate to have the quality of employees that we do. So I'm going to support the addition of this position because I just think it's really needed. And, you know, then when something happens, you know exactly who the contact is. And anyway, those are my comments. I think it would be a great support to our fire departments as well. And thank you.
Thank you, Warden. Counselor Musa.
Yeah, speaking on the same topic, I kind of agree with both of you. Is there any way we can put that for another year? Because now, this year, we're hiring a planner too, like someone to help with the planning. And no? I thought there's position to add. Okay. That changed my mind.
Projects?
What?
Through the projects position I just spoke about, it's not new money. We're just changing the position to something different.
No, I thought, like we were talked before, that we're gonna need somebody in planning. Did we add that position last year, or we're gonna add
Last
this one?
year,
Last
yeah.
year, okay, thank you.
Thank you, Counselor. Counselor Hepp.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Just to follow up on Warden Rolston's comments, and what I've noticed over a few years now is that we're a growing municipality, something comes up and, well, we'll let this employee kind of look after that, something else, and then this employee looks after it. After a while, the employees are getting far more work than what they should be getting. And it's not reasonable. I know the jobs are stressful enough as it is, and I fully support this position. I think this would take a lot of stress and workload off of all the rest of the staff that's out there, and I think it's just something we have to do, so, thank you.
Thank you, Counselor. Seeing nothing further, continue on, CAO.
Okay. So I touched a little bit on real estate earlier with our disposal of surplus property project. We currently are making great headway on that as far as getting our inventory. I think we had 13 different spreadsheets from over the years of properties that we've owned, and we've sorted all through that and now have a mapping tool that we can focus our discussions for council on those. We do have, in this year, $40,000 funded from reserves to do an encroachment review. We have a lot of parks and trails and properties that have encroachments, obvious encroachments on them. So we need to do some surveying and get those cleaned up. Some of those are on the DAR line, but some of them are also in our, sort of our general land holdings that we have. And also on your corporate service, in your corporate service department, you have your IT department. Again, this is an area where we haven't added any resources in a number of years. We've grown exponentially. And what we're finding in our IT department and in the projects that we're doing, not just in that department, but across the board, everything now has an element of technology. You can't implement a project without some kind of technology being involved with it. And so we're struggling to get enough hours in the day to do that level of work to support the organization. And everything we're doing seems to be sort of a catch-up. It's more reactive work. So there is a position in here for an IT generalist. That person would sit sort of around to help with the planning and the support to the organization, but also work as succession planning for our team in the IT department. And I could go into all the, if you want more information on what they would be doing around the Windows servers and communication platforms and, your council audio-visual, your system management support, all of system security, all of those things require sort of that end-user type support as well as that after-hours support for some of our critical services. We do have some money in here for mobile device management. Again, that's to manage our risk associated with having mobile devices that are attached to our network from a cybersecurity point of view. And the telephone system, we have recently signed on to the Province of Nova Scotia platform or their purchasing agreement. So we have our phone systems renewed, but there's going to be some decisions over the next 6 months as we go through and implement that, and some of their systems go out of date. So we do have $23,000 of new money in here, but we funded that from reserves because we're not entirely sure that we need to have that next iteration yet. And we didn't want to budget for it as an ongoing expense if we didn't need it. And then this year, of course, with the municipal election, we'll be replacing the council laptops, and we're also replacing our staff laptops. We got an extra year from the laptops than we had hoped, but they have definitely reached the end of their useful life. So we'll be looking to replace those into the new year. As far as economic and business development, council approved a new economic development plan in May of 2023. And if you'll remember, we sort of stripped that down to focus on two key things. And that was the growing our investment and supporting our workforce development. So looking at that, the economic and business development team of 2 people that we have, plus 0.6 of an admin support for them. We do have another economic development officer in this budget. And they will support Graham and Angela in the work that they've been doing in trying to bring investment into East Hants, and have been quite successful over the last couple of years in doing that. The other thing that economic and business development staff are sort of quarterbacking for now is the transit as a service. So we have our latest 2019 transit service business plan, to which my 12-year-old reminded me today that 2019 was 5 years ago, which it doesn't seem like that, but it's 5 years old. So it's going to be updated with financials and a new model and do some community engagement and an implementation plan. This was at council's direction the last time we had a workshop. So we are searching for funding for that at the moment, and certainly be trying to maximize that funding. A couple of things around the business, the business park development. We've talked to council a great deal about land acquisition for our business park, so we continue to look at that in both areas for our business park, both Mount Uniacke and Elmsdale. And we also have a Mount Uniacke Park retail sign, and it's almost ready to go, I believe, similar to the one at the Elmsdale entrance, where people can advertise their business sign and they can buy space on that sign. So that's being worked on as we speak. And the Elmsdale Business Park Phase 7 concept plan, so the acquisition of property that council has made of late, this will start that development and starting to plan out what that next section of business park looks like.
Okay, CAO, we have a few people want to speak. First up, Councilor Rhino.
I'd just like to say, maybe it's only me, but I find this extremely difficult to go between this and try to find answers and things. So FTA generalists, what would be the cost for that? Or where would I find it?
Let me see. So for both of the IT generalist and the business development officer, the net cost in the budget is about $87,000 for both of those positions.
So is it in here?
Not specifically broken out in detail. It'll be in your human resources report.
So it'll be in the human resources report, how much of each position at that time, okay? Because like I said, I'm finding it really hard to follow along, going back and forth. It's struggling with this. And I don't know if you can make it any better the next time around or not. So did you say 87?
87,000.
87 for two people,
87 for each position.
pardon me?
For each position.
87 for each.
Yeah.
So I guess there, right there, there's 1, 2, 3, that roughly $240,000 that we're adding to this. So to me, there's a cent right off your tax rate right there. And that's what I'm looking at, is right there.
Is that all, Councilor?
Thank you.
Councilor Musa.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I know those positions are needed, and instead of blocking them, I think we should find a solution, and there's an easy solution for that, is to look at our business land pricing. Because last time we put 7 or 8 lots for sale, they went in one day and we had 9 counter offer on them. So we're giving land away. You want more people, you get more people, but I like to see us not getting away with that 7-year taxes to make up our original investment. I think we should get it as soon as we can, because now we are in a position that people are after us. Myself and Councilor Perry, they are asked every day for land in the business park. We said we have no land, and guess why? Because we're giving it away, and that's got to stop. And that will give you money not for the 2 positions. It will give you money for 10 positions you're going to add. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilor.
And through you, Mr. Chairman, we do intend to bring back the business park land pricing policy to council, before we sell any more land. Yeah. Our newly developed land will all be under new pricing. Yeah.
Okay, seeing nothing else, continue on, TAO.
So the next cost center is finance. Finance are on page 43 to 50 of your general, or on your business plans. Finance, really, the cost center of finance is where you see some of your larger expenses. They're not related directly to the finance staff, but so for example, your special pension payment is in this cost center. Last year, the special payment in the budget was $146,000, but the actual comes from your pension valuation. So the actual last year was 171. So the budget for 2024, 2025 is 188,000. And that was calculated in your 2022 actuarial review. So that is a known number for this coming year. Your tax exemptions are in here. They've increased by $25,000. Those would be the properties that council provides an exemption to. So either a not-for-profit assessments as they go up, their commercial assessments go up, your exemption for those people go up, as well as water utility properties are in there. And that's it, not-for-profit and water utility. There are some not-for-profit daycares in there that get partial exemptions. PVSC costs are increasing by 2% this year in our budget. That's the $300,000 and odd that you pay to the Valuation Services Corporation to do your assessments for you. And your assessment appeals have been maintained at $60,000. So what we do is we budget for the income coming from the filed roll, and we also budget $60,000. As people appeal their properties, their taxes will go down. So we record that as an expense in your budget. We've kept it the same. What we're hearing from PVSC is appeals are fairly consistent year over year. And this year they're down as of now, but year over year we get similar results. You also see the market review money in this budget for the entire organization. So this year, it's a $176,000 increase. That would be so that money will then get reallocated out to all the different departments across the board. We just put it in here for now, so there's no expectations from each individual department as we go through and do that detailed process for market review. We also have $11,000 increase for our payroll fees. Those are reflective of different services that we're bringing on board to help manage our timesheets and training documentation and whatnot. And then we also have in here a water rate review of $20,000 for the water utility, and you'll see that in the water utility budget. You won't see that in this budget here this evening. But again, it will take an exorbitant amount of time of finance staff's time and engineering and I&O to pull that the water utility rate review together. Some municipalities do hire that out, probably for twice the price that we've got in here to do it, or more. But what we find is our staff are so intertwined with those numbers and the long-term plans that to hire someone else out to bring them in to do the work that we can do is it's not required, I guess, spending. So that's finance. Is there any questions about finance? Yep. Oh, sorry.
Counselor Musa.
Sorry, can you please explain the market review for whole organization, like a little bit more? I didn't understand it.
So there's different components to our wages. So we start with, we have salary scales for each of our staff, or each of our positions.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, so when we go to market to make
So
sure.
we're not hiring anybody to do that, like it's just
No.
the increase in.
Those are
okay.
actual dollars that will
Okay, I
go
got it.
towards
I got it. Thank you.
that market review of our wage categories.
Next up, Counselor Mitchell.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Just a quick question on the water utility rate review. Does that look at development coming forward also in that review, or just existing?
No, what that will look like, what that will look at is the capital planning for the water utility for the next 5 to 10 years. Then we'll look at the immediate need for capital and what those rates need to look like. And it will also look at the number of users, the anticipated growth of the system, of who's able to pay, and the consumption of the water and how much we need to make and how much that's going to cost. You have to set both your base rate and your
Usage.
usage rate, and they both cover different things. One is more for capital and long-term, and one is for your operating costs to treat the water and distribute it.
Okay,
And you will see your water budgets, the water utility will have a significant deficit this year. You need to do a rate review. You can't let it wait, otherwise you'll be eating away at your accumulated surplus fairly quickly.
how do you cover the deficit? Reserves?
It comes out of your accumulated surplus, yeah.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Counselor. Go ahead, CAO.
So the next group of cost centers is around infrastructure and operations in Jesse Hulsman's shop. So for the business plan pages, you're almost 23 pages of business plans here. There's a lot of information in this document for operations. This includes, we separated out in your document in two parts. One is the part that impacts the general tax rate, and the other part is the part that impacts the water, the utility. What you'll see in a lot of the projects is a lot of them are capital projects. They're in the business plan because they are going to take energy and effort. But you'll actually see the projects themselves and the details of the funding and whatnot in your capital budget next week. So as far as the general tax rate stuff for infrastructure and operations, this is where we talk about solid waste management, roads, solid waste management roads primarily. So tipping fees this year, we do have a slide in here on page 68, on slide 68, which gives you the breakdown of all of the collection costs, transportation costs, and processing costs. So those are there for council to look at. We do have our new contracts in place, which started in April 1st, 2023. So those are effective until 2028. Our transportation contract started in April 2023 until 2026, and then our processing contracts are in effect same date until 2031. So council's been involved in the choice and selection of all of those. Net increase in cost overall for your solid waste contracts is about $172,000. We also have money in here this year to do your C&D cell assessment, which council approved before Christmas. And we also have some increases in here for our household hazardous waste. About $9,000 was added to your budget to add a household hazardous waste event in the Kennecott-Rawdon area. And the rest of that $20,000 is the increase in costs of materials that we're taking from those household hazardous waste. We then have to pay to process them in the shredding event. The $9,000 at the shredding event is included in this. And just in general, more of that type of product is coming into our waste management center. So there's about $7,000 of that is actually just the product that's coming into the waste management center. We then have to turn around and process. So that's that $20,000 for HHW. From operations on the general tax rate, there's a flood risk mitigation study for Paley Brook, that should say Brook, not Book, for Paley Brook. There's also, under roads, we have an increase in provincial roads transfer expense of $21,000. So that's the money that we send to the province for our J-class roads, provincial J-class roads. And we also have in this budget one full-time equivalent for the environmental engineering technician. So that's partially funded by the general tax rate and partially funded by the systems. And that position is, we have one person already who is tapped out, and there's lots of things that we're not getting done as far as, not necessarily, we're getting all of our compliance work done, but we're not getting all of the other stuff done that needs to be done from an environmental programming point of view. So an extra FTE partially funded by the general tax rate, 50-50. They would work at things like sampling at the Waste Management Center, sampling at the, for our water systems, our wastewater systems, and things like doing water conservation programming. We don't do that well now. Those are the types of things that we need to do better. So those two positions could in tandem work towards some of that environmental work that really should be done continuously and ongoing from a municipal perspective.
Okay, we have a few questions here, CAO. First up, Councillor Tingley.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Question regarding the flood risk mitigation study for Paley Brook. Which brook is that? Like, I know where Paley Road is, and what was the motivating factor to do this study?
Go ahead there, Director Richmond.
Through you, Mr. Chair. Paley Brook, it does go through Paley Road. It skirts up near Logan Drive, then crosses over by Poplar,
I know
where the lift
I know the
station
brook
is.
now, yeah.
That's the brook. And so there are two brooks that staff are focusing on, linked to potential flood mitigation because we can see development happening upstream in the future. Paley Brook is one, Barney's Brook is the other. Paley's Brook, staff believe, is the opportunity to get quicker wins sooner because there's a chance for development to happen faster north of or beside the Ryan Avenue area, and we want to get ahead of that. So that is the reason why that one first, and it's a less complex system than Barney's Brook, where we'll be able to capture some learnings when we go into a more complex system. I'll forecast ahead. The following year, I'm absolutely going to be putting forward a study on Barney's Brooks, but I believe we have time because there's really three things that I see that need to happen related to that brook, which is the culvert on CN, modifications to the municipal standard, which some tweaks, which we're likely going to be able to get done this year, and then a study that gives us a longer playlist because the development upstream it's going to be a longer ways out, so we're going to have some more time and that momentum. That culvert's really the critical one versus Paley Brook, which is the focus here and recommended in the budget. There's a lot of pre-existing development already in play, and there's a lot more homes that intertwines and impacts now. So looking to figure that out first, and that's why, and that's the brook.
Okay, thank you for that answer.
Thank you, Councillor. Thank you, Jesse. Next up to speak, Councillor Rhino.
Yeah, kind of on that subject, then I have another question after. Are not we waiting for a study on flood mitigation that's coming up? And I guess, why wouldn't we be lumping that all in? Why are we jumping into the mitigation study right now on Paley Brook before we even get to report on, on flood mitigation all over?
Go ahead, Director.
Through you, Mr. Chair, there is a report. It's coming in February. And the report itself on flood mitigation is a timeline in the history. It's to bring this current council up to speed on everything we've done over the last 2-3 decades as a municipal unit, what's gotten us to the point and helps us talk out. There's not a recommendation forward of here's a playlist of things. It's more of this is how we've gotten to our existing policy, how we've approached things to facilitate more conversation. Within our existing policy, it tells us as staff to bring forward areas of study when things come up. It's part of council's adopted policy now is identify flood risk mitigation studies as they come up. This one came up, and so within policy, we're bringing it forward. So it's two separate topics from a staff perspective, or how we saw it anyway.
I guess from a staff perspective, it might be two different subjects, but sitting in his seat, it sounds like it's one topic, and it just seemed confusing. Well, why are we doing a study on Paley Brook when we haven't even gotten a report on if we're gonna delve into flood risk mitigation over across the municipality? So that's why it was confusing to me. And again, not wanting to wait for the HR report. What would be the cost of this full-time position funded partially by the general tax rate?
Had to shut one off to get to your CAO, just 1 second. There you go.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. The all-in cost for the environmental engineering technician would be $75,000.
Thank you for that.
Is that all, Councilor Rana?
Yes.
Thank you. Next up, Councilor Mitchell.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, through you to staff. Following up on Councilor Rhino, the flood mitigation study, was any consideration given to the businesses along the number 2 across from Elmsville Lumber that had flooded for the second and third time?
So, councilors, I think so there is a study coming on whether you want to delve into broad stroke flood mitigation, working on, we know that the cost is millions and millions of dollars to do this work. What these studies will give us is information that we can preemptively prevent floods from happening in the future. So it's like doing the groundwater study for Milford, or it's preventative, so you can look at development and how development needs to happen to not cause more damage than it could. So these are really to understand the lay of the land and how development needs to happen to prevent floods from happening. What we have across the municipality are situations where you have flooding already, and how are you going to prevent that from happening in the future? That's the conversation for February and moving forward. Is that a fair assessment, Jesse?
So that there is part of the study?
In February, you'll get a report on the issues that are happening around the municipality with flooding and how you want to participate in trying to fix those or study them or understand them. What we've done to this point, where council's thoughts have been around flood mitigation, and where you want to go next. It's not a conversation, flood risk mitigation is not a conversation it's not a one and done. You're not going to get a report and go, okay, we have all the information we need. It's, here's the information, you need to start the conversation. Okay, what more do you need to know? Where do you want to go? What route do you want to take? This is going to be a longer conversation than just one. If you want to not do the Paley Brook in your budget, you can do that. But I think your current policy does say if we can see far enough ahead that we should be looking at flood mitigation for a particular area to prevent these long-term issues that you're now seeing in all your other areas, then we're supposed to bring those up and bring those to council. That's what this is. This is a preventative, let's get ahead of it, see how those downstream houses are being impacted now and how we can help it later.
So there'd be information in the study that I could share with those businesses that have been impacted, or no?
There will not be in this particular study. This is down in Lance. This is one brook. There's a certain number of brooks that go through your corridor area.
Right.
And this one doesn't impact those businesses in Elmsdale. There are others that do.
So going through the director, what could I pass on to the residents, the businesses along that stretch?
Hold on a second, Director. I really think that's a question. I think that's a question when we get that first study in February. It's not for budget. We're not talking flood mitigation right now. We're talking budget, right? And I think when that mitigation study comes, if you have questions about specific areas, it'll relate to that study, not currently now in this budget.
I understand that, Mr. Chair, but if we have an event with the snow down and et cetera, and flooding does occur again, what do I tell those businesses that?
It's not the first time
It's
they
not-
flooded, correct?
Right,
Right?
so they're looking for an answer of some sort, and what can be done?
Council is not directed for that to be studied yet. We don't know the answer to that question. So that would be something that would have to be studied to see what can be done to prevent that from happening. That's the question for February.
Yeah, that's easy to say, but for them, it's a difficult choice, so.
Next up, Counselor Musa.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'm not at all against that study being paid by the general tax rate, but I just don't know why when the only study that we had for Mount Uniac for the recreation, we had to pay ourselves for it, and everything else come from general tax rate for study. We have everything coming from general tax rate except when something happening somewhere. And I don't think that's right. I think that's right, that what happened to us, just as a notice, wasn't right. Thank you.
Thank you. Counselor Rhino.
Yeah, just a clarification, Paley Brook, now you might have said, staff may have said where that is, but is that near is that the brook that runs, that somehow feeds that problem where by Robert Scott that was brought up with Councillor Tingley?
No, that's Barney Brook.
That's Barney's Brook. Am I?
That's Barney's Brook.
Oh, you're waiting for that.
Through you, Mr. Chair. Paley Brook outfalls past Paley Road, which is behind Shawbrick.
Okay.
To give you, like, that's the outfall into the Shuby River. And then it goes from there and it kind of cuts up by Logan in Lance, that subdivision, Logan Drive. It cuts through some houses, then kind of comes across near Poplar Drive where we have a lift station, up towards the new inland developments area behind Ryan Avenue, and then up and across the 102 that way. It doesn't have many tributaries off of it, but that's the flow. So versus Barney Brook it's a different watershed and it's a different tributary altogether. And it's much more complex. It's just farther down. It's more north, if you will.
Well, again, I guess I'm really confused because, again, waiting for this report that's coming down, could we not be accused of picking and choosing who will be doing risk mitigation studies on by doing Paley and not the problem that is in Lance and Councillor Tingley's area? This is what the public may come up with. Why are you doing a study on that and you're not doing anything here? So could that be seen in that light?
Through Mr. Chair, it could, but I'd go back to actually my priority comment on Barney's Brook. I believe there's 3 steps on Barney's Brook that need to take place in order. CN Rail culvert needs to be upsized. That is the biggest thing that can help Robert Scott Drive from the information we know right now. Mm-hmm. Modifications to the municipal standards so that any new development factors in some climate change factors into the design. That's going to help. And then us doing a study might bring in further long-term goals as new development comes in that we can even augment things. But so 3-tiered approach, and it has a longer playlist. And so there's more time. The development's not projected to happen as quickly. And that culvert piece isn't the municipal priority. So it's not as close here and now. And that's why staff are suggesting doing Paley Brook first. And it's about capacity and our ability we just can't do everything at once. And that's the honest truth on resourcing. I'd love to do them all. It's too much to absorb. It's too much to do all at once and do it well. And so you prioritize based on severity and opportunity. There will be development that happens upstream of Paley Brook sooner. That's speculative. You never know for sure, but highly likely based on our pipe network, the opportunity based on land. And we do have some challenges there that we'd like to deal with. And we have done this before. I'll give the example in 2014, we did a section in Alderney subdivision. It was successful. We did a block. We isolated the area. We got funding for it. So we got PCAP funding for this. We got funding from Nova Scotia Environment to help with this, offset the study. We'd absolutely apply for funding on this study as well. And then it gave us a playlist. It wasn't a quick win. We had to look for opportunity to residents that we provided. And of the opportunities, the one big project we were able to do was the Mackenzie Court Cross Culvert. We identified the upsizing. We sought it out. We did that work a few years back. And we got PCAP funding for that too. So we got funding for the study, then we got funding for the additional project because it tied back to a study. So to do these studies and then identify infrastructure projects up later, there's actually a financial incentive to having these studies because the province rewards you on grants if you have something pre-identified from a third party that says it's going to help environmentally. So there's a method to the madness on prioritizing and spreading those out. And of that line, and so the comments to Councillor Mitchell on why not Mill Pond Brook, that's the name of that complex. It's just the next opportunities that much further out, and it is on staff's radar. So that is absolutely on staff's radar, that what you can do in the here and now, it's staff's radar based on our currently policy and how we read it and how we're revolving or how we're planning. We're saying, okay, we take on these studies, we prioritize them based on severity and opportunity, we create a plan, and then we execute. Now, if that workload and that plan changes based on February's discussion and what we do and how we do it with respect to stormwater in February, well, that may change. But that's the February discussion, which is different. And so which should come first, there's absolutely going to be varying and differing opinions from residents that are feeling things different. The folks on Robert Scott Drive are going to have a different opinion than folks that are impacted by Paley Brook, then differing opinion from the folks on those businesses down by number 2. No question. There's no question. They're all going to have a different opinion. But we're stepping back and looking at a global picture. This is what staff is recommending, and I'm very confident in that order.
Well, I guess for me, I'm still very cautious about, picking this one. And in that report that's coming next month, council should say, no, we're not having nothing to do with it. So then we've already committed to this one. So I'm very cautious in how we approach this. It may, on paper, Jesse, you may have it right down to everything right there. But for the public to understand this, right? And they view it as, well, they're not doing nothing for this one. And this is where I say I'm very cautious about this because it just seems kind of backwards. So that's all I have to say. Thank you.
Thank you, Counselor. Reminder, this is a budget meeting. This is not about wastewater management. All right? So let's keep the topic towards, if you have a question of 50,000, that's fine, but there is a study coming. We'll have the discussion of wastewater management on the 20th. Stormwater. Warden Rolston.
You took the words right out of my mouth. Yes, and I'll just add that what we will have in February is a report that will be global for all the problems in the municipality that we're aware of and a starting point from bringing that together. I think what this is forward thinking so that we don't repeat the mistakes that were made in the past and create similar problems. And I think that's ongoing work that we do and should be doing as we move forward because standards are different today. And we know more today than we did 40 or 50 years ago when many of those subdivisions were built. And this is coming out of reserves. It's not impacting the tax rate. So I certainly support the $50,000. Thank you.
Thank you, Warden. All right, seeing no further questions, moving on. CAO.
So councilors, the next slide is the one that we talked about a lot of the information on. It's just to give you sort of that capture of all your solid waste costs from one budget to the other and the variance and where that's taking part. So again, $172,000 increase in your solid waste management expenses over last year. Still on the general tax rate, still in I&O. Some of these are urban service rate. This is a list of your capital projects. This is half. There's another slide with them. And sort of your justification for that extra project engineer. There's lots of work to be done. You'll see your capital budget next year, so I'm not going to go through all of these, but we have expanded and fully resourced our roads team just recently in the last probably 6 or 8 weeks. So I think you're going to see a lot of great work come out of that roads team in 2024, 2025. And our waste management team, again, there's lots of work to be done in the Waste Management Center, but there's also that forward-thinking planning for what that Waste Management Center looks like sort of 5-10 years from now and what our services are. So again, these are all through the document, specifically for the urban service. So Councillor Garden Cole, did you have a specific question about a capital project in INO?
Yes, I do. A couple, actually. I'm just wondering, crosswalk 145 on Highway 2. That's an optimistic amount?
I think that's a good amount. I think we're optimistic that we can get there eventually. We've put it in the budget.
Okay. Sidewalks, that's redoing?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
And the rehab on Thomas Street?
So part of what our roads team has been doing with our asset management work is looking at our gravel roads and our paved roads and doing condition assessments. So Thomas Street would need a rehabilitation of that gravel road based on the deck and the condition of that road.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Counselor. Next up, Counselor McPhee.
Thank you, Chairperson. I think this would be a good time to, I alerted everybody earlier. I hope you read my email and maybe had a chance to open up the picture so you'll be able to see what I'm talking about. But it's a small parking lot in Shubenacadie that I was approached by some people to see about getting it plowed and maintained. And it's, if you're not, I don't know if you're familiar with Shubenacadie or not, if you know where the Cenotaph is, it's a parking lot right beside it, and it's across from what is now the Violet Rose gift and thrift shop, and also the After Trauma Empowerment Network. These are nonprofit businesses or organizations. The Violet Rose shop supports the After Trauma Empowerment Network, which does great work. They have quite a few different things that are happening there all the time. So anyway, just to give you a little bit of history maybe on it, this used to be the area that was kind of the business center for Shubenacadie. The Royal Bank was there, the post office used to be there. Eventually they moved. It became the family drugstore eventually and the bargain shop. Eventually those two buildings were joined. So this is the building. There's a bit of parking in front of the building, but this is the main parking, was always across the street there. It was owned by CN. CN did nothing to look after it, so it was just looked after by volunteers in the community. It would get some gravel, it would get plowed. Over the years that stopped as the businesses died out there and there was no business there. Wasn't anybody looking after the parking lot or plowing it. Anyway, eventually it became the municipality's property in 2000, and the parking lot's been sitting there. And as I say, things have kind of slowed down, but now we do have people in this area. We also have the Hans Realty office. We have another building that's unoccupied at the time there. All these businesses or possible business could use this parking area. It's a very needed parking area anyway. It's about 5,000 square feet. So that's what I'm asking for, is that municipality start giving some basic maintenance and plowing to this. And also it sort of fits in with our business plan that already looking at developing the parking area in that. The municipality owns quite a piece of land. So this would be kind of not the first phase, but would fit in with that we're going to look after this parking lot for the local businesses. It's kind of a historic parking lot. So anyway, I would like to move the following. like to move that council direct staff to include funding for annual operations of a municipal parking lot in Shubenacadie, PID 453-30214, approximately 5,000 square feet, as part of the budget adjustment sheet for council discussion.
Get a mover?
I'll second it.
Second? For discussion, Warden Rolls.
So just wondering if we have any idea of the cost.
Well, initially would be the biggest cost, because the first year we'd have to, we would need some grading, basically scarifying to cut out the potholes, blend in the material, and then add some gravel and that. So I would think that would be in the idea of probably 5,000 to 7,000, I would think. Then after that, I don't think it would be a very high maintenance cost, mostly just plowing.
Okay, we have Director of Corporate Services here. Go ahead, Adam.
Yeah, three, Mr. Chair. I think that's probably a reasonable estimate. The year one will include likely some signage and some gravel work, and then it's really the snow removal. Part of the motion that's on the floor here for council is that as part of your adjustment sheet, will have more of a defined number. But I think in that 5,000 to 7,000, 5,000 to 8,000 range is probably reasonable. We do need a little bit more time to review it. And it's really what it is defining a service level for council for really a municipal property that has been used as such, but not formally recognized by the municipality.
Okay, thank you. Councilor Chingley.
To the chair, should we be getting a report back on this first, just to find out what the cost is and what we should do, where we should pay it from, and all that sort of thing, rather than just make a motion to go ahead and do it? The motion's on the...
The motion is to review it and have it.
Oh, to just review it? Okay.
It is to go forward with it and have it brought back as part of the review sheet at the end.
Just to review it, okay. Good.
Councilor Hepp.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Quite familiar with the area, and Councillor McPhee is aware of this too, that there's a drainage system that runs underneath that too, and it's always caused a lot of problems there too. So I don't want to, when the staff do an assessment, to make sure you have a really good look at that, is that we get into that, that's going to be a huge expense on top of that. So we don't have to touch that. I think that would be a great idea. But that whole area from Shubenacadie right down has always been a problem area for water runoff. So, thank you.
Thank you, Councilor. CAO.
So through you, Mr. Chair, the parking lot in question is actually part of your budget to have the core village parking in Shubenacadie expanded for those businesses in Shubenacadie. One of the, there's $50,000 in the planning budget to get that all looked at. So we know there's issues with drainage in that area. It's actually a large parking lot that staff have, at initial outlook, have come back with costs that I think are probably a little too much for this particular project. So I think we need to scale it back, and we'll work on that throughout this year to get that. But council has already committed to studying what that parking lot looks like, how we can make it a municipal central parking lot for the village core of Shubenacadie, because a lot of those buildings aren't developable within those parking requirements that you would normally have. So this is key to the development of the village of Shubenacadie. And as you get your wastewater on track and you get more homes being developed in Shubenacadie, this is going to be key to building your community back. I think the maintenance of this for year one, being next winter, is sort of just a stopgap before you get into what it looks like to maintain that parking lot on a ongoing basis. So for this year, we'll bring back a dollar value on your budget adjustment sheet. Operationally, we're not going to have all the answers by next week, but we'll have sort of the high level amount that you need to put in your budget to get through the first year. But long term, you're going, my understanding from the decisions you've made to this point is you're going to be maintaining that parking lot long term anyway. We just don't have a model right now where we have a parking lot that is just on its own that we would maintain. Like everything we maintain right now is attached to something we own. So a building or a facility or something. So this is just a little bit different. But year one, we'll get through it, and then once you figure out what you're gonna do with that parking lot long-term from a capital point of view, I think you're gonna have ongoing maintenance of that parking lot going forward anyway. So we'll bring this back as part of the budget adjustment idea if this motion passes, and we'll have it in place for next year.
Thank you, CAO. Councillor McPhee.
Thank you, Chairperson. Yes, as Councillor had stated, there's certainly drainage issues, and yeah, I'm aware of them all, right? I don't think that this bit of gravel and plowing would affect that, but further on, if we develop this, if council decides to develop these parking areas, then certainly we'd have to approach the province, because it's a provincial drainage network, so they would have to be involved in anything of that. But this certainly, I don't think, would have any effect on that drainage now. Thank you.
Thank you. Seeing no one left to speak? Question's been called. We'll go to the vote. And the motion's passed unanimously. All right, CAO?
So moving on to your urban service rate, the variance table for this particular rate is on page 74 of your business plan document. Primarily in here, the biggest things you're going to see are studies or follow-on studies for your, the biggest one this year, the new one, is the $200,000 Lance Lagoon sludge profile study. So that is basically to look at the sludge in your lagoon and how much time you've got. That's the simplest way to put it. Your wastewater treatment plant optimization study was done this year. We have follow-up information to gather to sort of round out that study. So that's got a $10,000 cost in it for this year. We also have some scoping around the Poplar Drive lift station, looking at the capacity, the inflow and infiltration at that lift station, and the elevation. So we need to do some surveying and work around that. That lift station will need to be upgraded. This is sort of that scoping work to get that information. And we also have, I mentioned earlier, we're looking at doing backup power for a lot of our lift stations. But in order to do that, we have to determine where and how we can make that fit and how that works. So you can't just go and put a generator on a lift station. You need to know, do you have the power sources? Do you have the land? All of those really important things, and the hookups and whatnot. So $30,000 in this budget coming from the wastewater reserves to do the scoping for those backup power. And we know that's a critical part of our EMO response during storms and whatnot, is to have that backup power. So in general, in this budget as well, you're seeing all of the costs come on board with the new wastewater treatment plant in Shubenacadie. What we could operate the old plant for is not what we are going to operate the new plant for. Significantly more dollars. You're looking more at what it costs to operate the Milford plant. So you're going to see power increases for Shubenacadie, but it's also in general across the board. You're seeing power increases. The pumps that we run on these lift stations and plants are massive, and the impact to the power is quite significant with even small adjustments to power rates. We also have not $32,000 for plant and equipment maintenance increases for those plants. The controllers, sequence batch reactor for Milford, and all the new expenditures for the Shubenacadie plant are in there. And the controllers are sort of the testing equipment that we have in our plants. There's 2 plants that need to be upgraded. And then, like we just saw, there's several capital projects related to the urban service rate that you'll see in your capital budget with all of those details. So still on the urban service rate, the wastewater management fee, Wade touched on this last week. That fee is going to increase by 20 cents in the draft budget to $2.40. So the increase in that revenue will be $160,000 to the urban service rate. Because Milford doesn't have that wastewater management fee, because they don't have water bills, they will see a 1.5 cent increase to the urban service rate this year. And that is strictly because of the cost associated with operating plants, power, debt charges, those types of things. The other areas in the urban service rate that are on services will see a 0.5 cent increase on their rate, but they will also see that 20 cents per cubic meter add to their tax burden. So what it will depend how much their tax burden is going to increase, depending on how many people are in their house, how much water they use, what kind of appliances they have, all of those things. So part of what we hope to do is to do more education around how people can conserve water. And although it brings in less revenue, it's the right thing to do to educate your public on using less water from a water conservation, climate change perspective. So that's the urban service rate and the impacts on them. Essentially, all of the costs across the urban service rate are going up. And what we're seeing in our systems are massive amounts of breaks in lines, testing, trying to find where these breaks and leaks are, both in the water system and the sewer system. You'll hear the same thing consistently across the board. Those contracts and agreement prices are going up across the board in all of our utilities. Any questions on I&O? So moving on to Parks, Rec, and Culture, there's a lot going on in this cost center as well. You'll see this on page 75 of your business plans. Parks, Rec, and Culture, you're looking at from the recreation point of view on the first slide here. We also have tourism in this cost center, and we also have all of our buildings and our parks in this cost center. So starting with recreation, as we all know, the East Hants Aquatic Center, we're hoping to open that in spring, summer of 2024. This budget has assumed that that opening will happen. We've brought in some extra money. We've budgeted all the expenses as if it was open the whole year, so as to not mess up your budgets from year to year and all your variances. But we've also budgeted $20,000 more to come in from reserves to reduce the burden on the tax rate, because we believe we'll have that savings in the first month at least from staff salaries and whatnot. This is one of those areas where if you wanted to take a risk, you could probably increase that transfer coming in from reserves by a little bit more and then reduce your rate. But it will artificially be reduced because next year your budgets will be a full year operating. God help us, knock on wood, we'll be there. So we also have additional revenue in this budget for wages for our part-time staff and our seasonal staff, both in parks programming and the aquatic center. And council received a report later in the fall around a recreation coordinator, so that position has been funded in this budget for a recreation coordinator. And I don't really want to call it sort of for one area in particular, but this person would be stationed out of Mount Uniacke and focused on serving that area, Mount Uniacke and the rural areas, but not only that. So it wouldn't mean that we would have a corridor programmer and a Mount Uniacke programmer. We would just have programming staff that could easily serve all the areas in East Hants. So we also have some money in here for additional funds for school access and sport instruction. There's $13,000 each in there, but there's also offsetting revenue for those programs. They're not free programs. They would be funded through user fees and grants. This is also the budget that you're going to see your DAR line in the capital side of things. The development of that, we have budgeted out for 3 years at $50,000 a year. We also have active transportation routes being developed by Parks, Rec, and Culture and the Recreation Department. And then we have an event in here for community event pilot projects. So we hope to have our events coordinator put on some community events and drum up some of that community spirit and community togetherness that we hope to get. As you all know, we have a recreation facilities master plan budgeted for this year from a resource perspective. We intend to do that in-house. with $20,000 associated with hiring a student, a Master of Planning student, to help us with that. And we have $20,000 in professional services that would be needed for public engagement and an independent group doing that public engagement for us as part of that, that community engagement. Any questions on that?
First up, Councillor Rhino.
This is my usual question. What's the cost of that full-time position?
I think our finance staff are calculated as we speak. I caught them off guard, Councillor Rhino. $76,000.
All in, all down?
All in, all done.
Thank you.
So on to tourism. Council will remember that we have a $22,000 grant coming in from DFO this year for protecting the mud pittock habitat and education around that. So you have that coming in. We also have some associated expenses that we are required to offset that. Our wages in tourism are going up this year. We have our 2 sites, our Fundy Tidal and our Burncoat Head Park. The plan would be to have those open longer in the off-season. So Fundy Tidal, for example, is going from 60 man weeks to person weeks to 72 person weeks. I think it's open another 3 weeks at the end of the year. And then Burncoat Head Park would be 103 person weeks to 116 person weeks for that off-season tourism development. Still working on the tourism signage program. We've made some headway with our partners in our neighboring municipalities on that. We have some signage replacement that needs to be done at the tourism sites, mostly around those educational signs that we have. The name of them escapes me. Interpretive panels that we have at our tourism sites. Some of those need to be updated. And at Burncoat Head Park, we have 2 small projects. One is updating the counter for our visitor counts. Those are important when we look for grant funding and for information for external parties. So this new counter, the one that we have now, doesn't do what we need it to do. This would count people going up and down the stairs, essentially, and visitors to the Burncoat Head Park. And we have, at council's request, and because it's needed, a waste storage shed in play for Burncoat Head Park, and sort of a solution to storing our barbecues and waste and whatnot at the park. On the building side, we have disposed of a couple of buildings. The H. Horn transfer will be complete by April 1 of this year, so that one comes out of your budget. On the additional building maintenance technician support, currently we have 0.4 of a person that works here. As you've seen with the support that we need for our buildings and facilities, there's a recommendation to make that 0.4 into a 1 in this budget. And we also have a lot of work being done in our buildings around asset management and the work that's being done on condition assessments and whatnot for our buildings. We did the Sportsplex condition assessment this year. Our own staff are working on the condition assessment for this building for the initial go-round of it, to collect a lot of the data that we would normally hire someone to collect. So our staff are working on that now. And into next year, we'll know more about the capital requirements for this building and the Sportsplex building.
Question, Councillor Rhino.
Okay, what's the cost of 0.6 extra?
$30,000,
$30,000 above the 0.4 that we already have on time.
the new money.
Thank you.
Go ahead, CEO. Nobody else.
The next one in recreation is your playgrounds and parks. So we are expanding our Playbox program, which has been very well received in the community over the last couple of years. We have in the budget a playground for and a park for Charles Drive in Mount Uniacke. $60,000 of that is your capital to revenue coming from the general tax rate. The Kiln Creek design and construction, will happen over 2025 and, the Kiln Creek design is planned for this year for construction to happen 2025 to 2028. The DA trail work on the Dr. Kim's development in Elmsdale that the council is already committed to is in this budget from open space money. Your Lakelands Park design, the design will happen this year with construction to begin next year, and that's a larger multi-year construction, I think is the plan. Your Center Rodden Park and Playground is $148,000. That will be installed this year. And we have 2 docks that need replacement or repair. Jorfy Drive in Mount Uniac needs replacement, and the Shubenacadie repair. The Shubenacadie dock needs to be repaired, and both of those are in there in the budget at $5,000.
Okay, first up to speak, Warden Rolston.
Yes, thank you. In the Center Rodden Park, the majority of that is from the insurance, from the Center Rodden Hall. Does that dollar amount include the money from my district rec funds
Yes.
that's going towards that?
That's the total cost.
Okay, thank you.
Nothing else? Continue on, CAO.
And the very last slide in the business plan development is planning and development services. So their budget and business plan are on page 98 to 110. There are no new positions to be funded in this this cost center this year. We have been adding new positions in this cost center for probably the last 2 or 3 years just to keep up with our development needs. There is money being funded through reserves for the building official. This is year 3 of your 3-year plan to fund that from reserves. So next year you'll see that building official at full value in the council budget unless we're instructed otherwise. So as far as the projects on the go, so we have started the land secondary planning strategy. That's out to market now. There's a lot of work to be done on that project, so it will extend into 2024, 2025. But that money is coming from reserves, and that project has started. We also have the Mount Uniac secondary planning strategy, which is essentially how do we grow Mount Uniac with some more densification, some more growth, and manage that growth in Mount Uniac that's coming. We talked about the core village parking in Shubenacadie. The groundwater study in Mount Uniac, $21,000 is funded from the professional services reserve and the general tax rate. That study will give us sort of the same information we got from the Milford groundwater study, and will help us focus and plan development more related to that secondary planning strategy as well in the growth management area of Mount Uniac. Our accessibility plan we talked about earlier, that will be updated for 2025. Our Esri Asset Management and Town Suite software that we use, we've got some additional upgrades we'd like to do to keep some of that asset management work that I talked about going. And that tool that our GIS folks are using is really important to get good information for council. So I think that extra $13,000 is well spent. We also have in here, this is where your EMO budget lies for now. We've got a grant funding for purchasing some more TMR2 radios and Starlink internet service for those emergency events. So we'll have communication backup and redundancy if needed. And we have the East Municipal Housing Strategy on the go for this department, again, being staff-led, so probably not a lot of expenses related to it, but some really valuable information that's going to come from that study to help your community and where it's going to go in the future. And then we also have, per your motion in January, this is where you're going to see the increase in the SHREW, the East Hants Special Hazardous Response Unit. This is where you'll see the increase in that grant for $5,300 that council approved in January.
Okay.
So, Mr. Chairman, that is the presentation of the business plans. Essentially, at this point, if there's things that we want to look at or if council wants to make decisions on, you have all the information, what your tax rates are like, your business plans, where we see the municipality going in the next year. So I will open the floor.
Okay, so first up is Councillor Musa to speak. I will let everybody know we have reached the time of adjournment. So first up, Counselor Musa.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I know the playground on Charles Drive. Is there any, are you guys looking at anything for Koch Country in the future? I know we have municipal land over there, like 100 acres or something, but is there any, I think that subdivision have made a lot, have put Mount Uniac on a map so far, and we already have a lot of, like 400 homes going there, and we have another 550 that's coming next month probably or something. So is there anything in the plan for that
Go
area?
ahead, Adam.
Yeah, thank you. Through you, Mr. Chair, I'll make a comment here, and I may hear more from Alana momentarily. There is quite a bit of substantial work in the development agreement for a trail network. Council does have water access as part of the DA that's established there, and there are future land holdings, specifically to additional assets there. I'm not sure that anything's planned. Just confirming with Alana, nothing is planned for 24-25 budget, but there are significant trails being done in Cottage Country.
Yeah, but like when we did our master plan, every certain distance you should have a playground or something like.
Yeah, through you, Mr. Chair, that's a good point. We'll have to look back at our playground strategy to see where that fits, and Alana can provide an update later, just based on your comment there.
Yeah, because you mentioned like Charles Drive, you mentioned Lakeland, and I think that development is the best that ever happened to Mount Uniac so far, and I think we should be looking at, I think. And another question probably for John. So when we do the groundwater study in Mount Uniac, does that mean that if a development coming in for zone changing from RU to R1 or Koch Country or country residential, they still have to do the groundwater study too?
Go ahead, John.
Through Mr. Chair. This study would be a very high-level one, so yes, if you are doing a specific development in a specific area, we'd probably still want to see a study for that site. This is really about the secondary planning strategy where we're looking at adding density to Mount Uniac, and what can the question will be, what can the overall aquifer in that area support?
Okay. Thank you.
Okay. All right, thank you. Seeing we're past the time of adjournment, we'll have to move the transfer tax report to our next budget meeting, which I believe is next Tuesday. So I'll be looking for a motion to adjourn to reconvene on the 13th. Moved and seconded. All those in favor?